Right. Okay, so we'll officially kick it off. We give a little buffer, just for everyone to get here. So I'm Danielle Stroud. I am the Senior Director of Programs and Partnerships for Habitat for Humanity Lake-Sumter. And we're extremely happy to have you today for our conversation on women in housing. So yes, we have things that we're going to talk about. We have a few panelists that will share their personal professional experiences on a few questions. However, I want you to know that this is an opportunity truly for a conversation and engagement. We don't want you to just be hearing from a select few. We really want you to feel engaged. So we'll progress with a little bit of discussion from the panelists. And then at some point, we're going to break into smaller groups so that you guys have a little bit more opportunity to engage with one another, share some ideas, some solutions, and I will walk you through all that. Then we'll come back together as a group and kind of talk about some of the things that were talked about in the smaller groups. So clearly, Habitat for Humanity Lake-Sumter, our mission is to bring people together to provide homes, community, and hope. So this is an opportunity that essentially lends to why we exist, which is to facilitate an opportunity for a platform for discussing how to better our community. So when it comes to talking about women in housing, we could clearly talk about the why. Why is it that women are facing this challenge, maybe more than a male counterpart? But more importantly today, we're going to focus on the what, okay? We're going to focus on what is it that affordable housing, and specifically home ownership, what can it offer a woman, right? And then we're also going to talk about what can we do as women to support other women in the community. So that's really going to be the scope for today. Now, that's not to say that the whys and some other things won't flourish in conversation. That's perfectly fine and great. I just wanted to frame it for you guys so you had an understanding of where we're going today. All right, so next I'd like to introduce our panelists who are going to be speaking to us from their professional and personal experience. So we have Miss Gladys Cook. Gladys, right there with the blonde hair and the black, black glasses. She is from the Florida Housing Coalition. She's worked in housing for a very long time here in Florida, so has a lot of experience in the technical aspect, but also observing and living and breathing the challenges that families face in Florida. So Gladys will be speaking with us a little bit today. And then we also have Rachel Story. Say hi, Rachel.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
And Rachel is one of our past homeowners through Habitat. Rachel, when did you close? I can't remember. How long ago was it?
I closed in July, and I started working with you guys in November of 2019.
Okay. So, pretty fresh. She's an amazing insurance agent through State Farm and continuously working to better herself and her son's life. So she is going to really be talking from her personal experience, living and breathing it as she just came through it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So my first question that I'd like, so it doesn't have to go in any specific order, Gladys or Rachel, you guys can just chime in, and if no one speaks up, then I'll appoint you. So the first thing that I want you to kind of touch on are, from your professional or personal experience, what are 3 key impacts that homeownership can have on a woman?
It can put you in a mental stability position that, you feel secure, you have a place to call home. And when you have a child, they have a place to call home as well. And being at somebody else's house, it's not your home, and it's harder to discipline your child. And just, the impact that it has financially, being in a better neighborhood than someplace that I, hardly could afford to be in a good neighborhood renting somewhere. That was one of the main impacts for me, is to finally have a place that I can call home and raise my son and have memories there with my son.
Awesome.
Well, mine is kind of big picture, and it has to do with the number of people who are cost burdened in Florida. They're paying over 50% of their income on housing. And we look at that if they're homeowners or renters. And if you're paying over 50% of your income on housing, you have a severe cost burden. You can't buy a decent car, you scrimp on health care, you can't save for your kids' college. So those are, I guess those are some of the personal things. But when you look at the difference in the burden between renters and homeowners, the cost burden renters have increased by 69%, but the cost burden for homeowners in the habitat category has decreased by 37%. So when you get a home, you're not cost burdened anymore, because especially if you have a habitat home, you can afford your housing, you can have a car and save for college. So that it's kind of a big picture, but it means a lot throughout Florida when you look at, there's 3 million people in Florida with severe cost burdens, and also that the people that Habitat is looking for to build for are renters. And so that's what you're doing, is you're bringing people out of being a renter and helping them get up so they don't have that cost burden.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. So clearly, I hear that it provides the ability for financial stability, right? Other opportunities in life, safety and security, right, Rachel?
Yes.
And then just being able to really truly invest in your future, right? So there's the savings, the financial savings aspect of it, but there's also this, like Rachel said, that mental future look that makes you feel like, okay, I'm working towards something and I'm going to continue to do so. So thank you guys for sharing your thoughts and opinions on that. So in thinking about that, right? So why doesn't everybody own a home? You get a home and you get a home. So let's talk a little bit about some of the barriers. So what, in your professional, personal opinion, are the biggest barriers to becoming a homeowner?
I think it's, working hard. There's a lot of things that you have to do in order to keep up with a home. And I think it has to do with being positive too. Like, you have to have a positive outlook on things, and you have to be constantly giving into others. And that's when you start receiving more blessings than what you would ever have imagined, is when you start giving into other lives. Opportunities open and you meet the right people, and God makes a way for you, and you see things and you have opportunities that you could never even have thought or imagined. But it's about having a good positive attitude. And, being a homeowner, there are, some things that, I wish that somebody else would do, but, you have to take it day by day and do what you can do. And as a single mom, sometimes it's overwhelming, and then you just have to ask for help. And that's the first thing. I think a lot of people are afraid to come to one another and ask for help. And I think that has a lot to do with why people don't get into programs or find a home, is because they're afraid to ask for help. And that's like the first step into, doing something, that you need to do, is asking for help.
So Gladys, before you chime in on yours, Rachel, I have a little bit of a counter question for you. So did you feel like you knew where to go for help? Like when, before you came to Habitat, did you have any idea how you might take those steps? Or did you feel like, tell me how you felt about trying to figure the system out,
I looked at places for renting, and a lot of the places that I looked at renting, they were awful. It was like homes that, were in bad neighborhoods, and I didn't even feel comfortable like going in the neighborhood myself, let alone have my child there at night and living in a single home with, just a woman in the household. And I started praying about it, and people told me about Habitat before, and I looked on the website, and at the right moment and at the right time, it was like you had one house available in Eustis, and you had two in Lake Panasoffkee. And so I called the village's office, and I asked for the application, and they sent me the application, and I was like, well, this is probably like a once in a lifetime opportunity. I need to fill this application out as soon as I can and get it back to them as soon as I can. And I did, and it was like God's perfect timing and God's perfect moment for that opportunity that just kind of like fell in my lap. It was almost like God answered prayers, and it was amazing. And Habitat has provided like so much more than I could have ever asked or imagined. And the people there, they're just great to work with, and they're always encouraging. And even when you feel like you can't do something, like I'm a full-time, I work full-time, and I'm a full-time mom, and then you have to do your community hours on the home for your service hours. And it was like, how am I ever going to get this done? But the people at Habitat like work with you in 1,000 different ways to help you earn those hours. So it was such a blessing.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. So Gladys, from the large scale picture, the community picture, what are some of the biggest barriers to becoming a homeowner, to homeownership?
Well, first of all is the income, low income. The cost of housing is way out of the reach for working people. The minimum wage has just stayed like this in Florida, and housing costs have gone like that. And so there's got to be some kind of intervention. And there are purchase assistance programs that will pay some of the gap, but Habitat works with you from, you may have bad credit, which is normal in most cases, and you don't have savings, and you just can't qualify, but Habitat takes the time to work with you to help you fix up your credit. And they do things like they don't hold medical debt against you and things like that. And then there's the whole counseling process that helps the home buyers go through so that they can become a homeowner. If they try to go to a bank, they're turned down immediately because they don't have the down payment. And so Habitat is very helpful with that too, because you don't charge 3% of the loan and things like that. It's just something that people can afford, especially single mothers. There's just, to me, there's just no other way for a lower income working mom, single mom, to own a home except through Habitat.
Awesome. Okay, so now I'm gonna throw something out to everybody. Okay, so feel free to unmute yourself to answer if you so feel compelled. If I don't hear any answers, I will start picking people.
Oh boy.
That's my job. So my question, right? So we've been talking about the impacts of housing, why it's important, what it can do, right? The personal experience that Rachel's sharing with you. So really we're dancing around this question that, you know, why is housing important, specifically homeownership? But what I want to ask you is, why should it matter to women? Why should it matter to you? And you can make it as personal and as you want.
You always have some place to call your home.
Okay. Why should it matter to you? Anyone else? Thank you, Faith.
I just think it's important to be able to stand, and anybody can make a stand and encourage one another, but it's important to have that place where you can stand, and you know, that place where you can grow. You can't grow in a rental unit your whole life, but when you have a home, it's like something that you look forward to when you come home from work. But not only that, anybody can be a leader. It's not just for the men, but it's for the women as well. And it's, you know, we are supposed to be role models for our younger generation. And I think that's where a lot of parents fail, is that just because you're a single parent doesn't mean like your child is losing something. Like you can fulfill those places that your child has by just, you know, encouraging one another and stopping for your daily task and just being there for each other.
Thank you. Who else? Why does it matter to you? Or why do you want it to matter to you? Or why should it matter to you?
Am I muted or can I speak?
Go ahead, Concepta. Was that Concepta?
Okay, so I think from a woman's perspective, it's important that we feel as empowered to grow wealth, to impact our families, even when a man does not exist in the family. So housing has always provided the foundation for growing that wealth. And I think that's very important as a woman to be able to feel like she has that opportunity. That's my input.
I'm going to hire you as our spokesperson. No, that's great. That's great. Does anyone else want to share?
I agree as well. Am I speaking? Yeah. I am.
Yeah.
I agree with that. In my case, why home ownership is important to me, I also want to leave a legacy for my children. Right now, I don't have any, but I'm trying to do everything I can in order to make it happen for me on my own, knowing that even if you don't have another person, man, woman, whatever, you can still be a role model. You can still be independent. You can still get what you want and build the American dream for yourself, regardless of other people, and having them make it happen or contribute to your legacy.
Awesome. I love it.
That's beautiful.
Go ahead, Ann.
My thoughts were first of the security that it gives you and the security that it gives your children. I was a single mother too. And to know that you have a place that you call home, and it gives you that, it gives your kids that sense of belonging. It's the neighborhood and the friendships that you build through that neighborhood. And secondly, it is the financial stability that it gives you in the long run, because you will build equity in that home. And that's huge. That cures the problem of the bad credit and all the things we talked about that stand in the way of home ownership. Then you have the opportunity to make a life for yourself.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so one thing that I will say personally for me, so clearly, you know, I live, eat, sleep, and breathe housing and habitat and wanting to help people. But, you know, the reality is in my
There was
life,
one last thing that I wanted to add to. I feel like.
Go ahead, Rachel. Was that you?
There was just one last thing that I wanted to say about that too. I want to be used as a witness to others that there is hope out there and that there are people that will help you. And I want people to be led to the right places at the right time, and just to be able to see that someone else can do it, that they can do it too. And just to encourage one another. Like, I think it's so important for, you know, if you have friends that are struggling, or if you have, you know, single moms that are struggling, just to, you know, witness to them and let them know that there's hope out there and lead them to the right places. And then, you know, get them to you guys or to whoever wants to help them, but to encourage them too, to speak life into others. I want to be able to do that.
And you said exactly what I was going to say. So basically, me personally, I feel like I've been afforded a lot of opportunity. Like I've had a lot of people who've been willing to mentor and guide me, and I'm ambitious, right? And so I want to do these things, but sometimes I don't know how to do it. And I feel like since I've been afforded that opportunity, it's my duty, right, to now provide what I can for other people to help guide them, whether it's a housing issue or something else. It doesn't matter, you know what I mean? If I can do something to help them progress in life, I feel like that's now what I need to do, because I was given that as well. So we'll go ahead and go into the next thing here. So I want to wrap up some of the things that were shared. So, you know, we talked about essentially homeownership as a tool, right? It's this tool to be able to further your life and provide this foundational future for you and your family. And that's really what Habitat is trying to do all the time. And Habitat's not the only person that looks to do this, right? It's just, I am Habitat, so I speak in the realm of Habitat. But there's many ways that we can move the needle to provide for community members in our family. In our community. So we talked about that. We also talked about some of the hindrances and the barriers. So when we're thinking about these barriers, lack of access for down payment, the lack of housing are out there, the low inventory, right? The inability or misunderstanding about resources that are out there. Maybe the knowledge is not being shared. Maybe people don't know where to go, or to Rachel's point, they just don't want to ask for help, point blank. So all right, so since you guys were discussing, you guys can be the first group to report out. So who is going to be your spokesperson?
I guess I am. I didn't know if that was the case, but yes. We think there should be more education on homeowners, and that we should use social media more to our advantage, and, you know, help one another and get people to the right places at the right time. There's not a lot of people that know about the information for the homeowners class. There's not a lot of people that will ask for help. But if we're constantly like using social media for a platform to provide them with housing opportunities or with education for the homeowners classes, I think that a lot more people would understand how the process works and what is involved, and that they could actually do it and that they could actually apply. I think a lot of the reason that someone doesn't apply for something like that is because they feel, they feel like they're lower than someone else. They feel like they should have achieved something at a certain age, or that they should have the resources that everybody else has, but that's not the case. Everybody has different stories, everybody has different timelines, and we shouldn't compare each other to one another, but we should.
Oh, she's frozen.
Encourage one another.
Yes, I agree. So what I'm hearing you say is basically a public awareness campaign, and this is something that's been talked about at the county level too. And thinking about some of these strategies is we just have a PR problem. We have a PR problem because nobody understands, first of all, what we're trying to do or the needs, and they just assume that everyone that might need support doesn't have a job and lives behind a dumpster, which is not the case whatsoever, right? So what I'm hearing you say is we need to do better, and by we, not just Habitat, but everyone who's working in this arena, do better to share information and resources and talk about, and honestly, the best spokesperson is somebody who is coming or done it. So Rachel, you get what I'm saying. That's why I pull our past homeowners in, because you guys can speak to it better than me, right? You are a hardworking person. There's no reason why anyone should ever say that you deserve less than everybody else. So good. Okay, next group. Who's our next group? How about who is in my group? Who's gonna speak for us? And it's not gonna be me.
Adelia.
Adelia?
So we basically discussed removing some of the bureaucratic, lines in place. So different items, especially related to HUD, with those public dollars and those extenuating situations that most people find themselves in, such as either dealing with a felony from the past, like 20 years ago, or other situations where HUD really will not permit you to use those dollars for a very specific person. So we talked about how we could work towards encouraging some of those antiquated line items to be removed. Part two of that would be engaging more of that private side, having more private dollars and private enterprise enter into the world of providing housing. Cindy brought up some really great points related to actually creating something that may be more woman-oriented, for women, by women, basically. And I thought that was such a great idea, especially when you start talking about public-private partnerships and being able to create something that is self-sustaining. So one of the things we mentioned is possibly women creating some type of trust or some sort of organization where they can accept public dollars and use public dollars or public land for the creation of homes for individuals.
Awesome, thank you. All right, how many other groups do we have?
We have two more, group 2 and group 3.
Well, I was in group 2, but we didn't choose anybody to speak.
So it's you, Anne, it's you.
Well, I learned a lot that I didn't know. I didn't realize that there was a state housing trust fund that's funded, as I understand it, from fees that are charged when you buy or sell a house, and that the state likes to just take that money and use it for other purposes than building homes. I also didn't know that the counties are responsible to keep an inventory of surplus land and publish that inventory. So we sort of talked really big picture on pressuring the legislature and our local governments in freeing up this funding and this land in order for Habitat to be able to build more homes and help more people.
Love it. So influencing public policy is huge. It's a long thought out fight, but you also touched on something else, which is that most people do not know that we have a trust fund for housing in the state of Florida, and that it's not being utilized the way it should be. And that should outrage people. But the fact that they don't know, they can't become outraged, right? So there's two pieces to the puzzle. There's informing the masses, right? We're gonna get a female mob here to help lead this charge on public awareness, and from there they cannot stop us, right? That's the intent. That's how I'm trying to fire you guys up here, okay? So great job, Anne. Thank you for sharing. So who's the last group?
Group 3.
That was our group,
Paula.
Danielle.
Okay, go ahead.
We had a lot of great conversations. A lot of them were about educational classes or homeownership classes, financial literacy, just helping women or anyone really who's looking for a home that qualifies with the Habitat to know about the opportunities that are available. And then we also discussed, I'm not sure how to word this, we stumbled over our wording. Is there a way that the number of homes that are needed can be made public knowledge? That's what we're trying to say? There's such a need, but no one's we keep saying there's such a need for homes, but that doesn't tell me a number. Is there a need for 1,000 homes? Is there a need for 100 homes? Because the bigger the number, it's just going to show the real need that's there.
Yeah. Hey, Gladys, do you guys have you're on mute, by the way. Do you guys have a figure? I know you look at that. So what is the housing shortage?
There's market and then there's need, and it's hard to evaluate housing need. And so we use cost burden. And so we know what people's income is, and we know if they're homeowners or renters. And so if you can look at the Schimberg Center it's a clearinghouse for affordable housing data. You can look up Sumter County and Lake County and go to cost burden, and you'll see how many people need a certain type of housing and how many houses there are. And so there's like 100 people that need something, and there's maybe 10 or 12 units. So it's kind of a math thing. But then there's the market, and that's just demand. And that's your waiting list, and the Sadowski Housing Trust Fund was mentioned. They have waiting lists for people that are trying to get purchase assistance at your two counties. And you can find out from them what that has been. And I'll just tell you, your two counties, Lake had 570,000 in its trust fund, and Sumter 350,000, and neither of those got any of that money because Florida's legislature continues to sweep the funding. Last year they actually did full funding, but the governor had to veto it because of the pandemic. But that is, that's connected to all of this is, that Sadowski State Housing Trust Funds that go to your local government, and Habitats statewide need and use those dollars to help people buy the homes. It's not people's tax dollars or anything like that. It's a documentary stamp surcharge. So it's really important to advocate for that. I kind of added on to that.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So Paula, to answer your question, there's not a clear and cut figure, but we can work towards that. And that is something, like I said, some of these bigger discussions that are happening, I think that's imperative to say, this is what we have, this is what we need, this is how many people are going to start coming into Florida, so that need is going to grow, right? Once again, it all comes down to how do you market this, which is all, that's where I always come from, right? If you're not explaining it well, and no one's going to listen. So that's great. Is there anything else from y'all's group?
We had one more thing. It was interesting that two of the people in our group found out about Habitat and the homeownership program through their employer, through flyers that were on bulletin boards at their work. So just another thing to think about in the future is to help more women know that. Maybe we reach more employers and ask about getting our materials into those places of employment.
Yeah, okay, awesome. All right, guys, so we're coming short on time. We're almost done here. So this conversation has been great. I hope it's been meaningful. I hope you've had the opportunity to share your thoughts. I hope you've learned a little something. So what we're going to do after we close this out, we'll share a little bit of an information via email that can share some ways that you can be involved with Habitat. So clearly, we created this conversation because we have our registration open for Women Build, which is an opportunity to advocate, fundraise, and volunteer for affordable housing for those in our community that need it. So we encourage and invite you to participate with us. If it's not for you, share the information, right? So raise the awareness about what we're doing. And this is just one opportunity out of many. In the email, we will also include, we talked a little bit about the housing trust funds today, and the fact that we need to be sharing things, including advocacy. So we are going to include an action item that you can participate on immediately by clicking some buttons for local as well as some federal action as it pertains to advocating for housing in our community. Lacey will be following that up. If you guys have any questions, feel free to open it up now. We will officially kind of end this, and I'm so grateful that all of you have come, and you were wonderful. I got all your ideas written down, so keep that in mind too. This is more of a think tank than anything. So thank you so much for everyone for being here. So you guys can feel free to log off or ask questions.